Have you ever wondered what truly makes a man wise and deeply cherished in his community? In today's captivating video, we delve into the ancient wisdom shared by a 72-year-old woman from a small village nestled in the serene hills of Yum. Her name is Madame Laura, and she carries with her insights that transcend mere physical connection, offering profound lessons about intimacy and human relationships. Her wisdom reveals secrets that are not only about physical affection, but about cultivating deep, lasting bonds that enrich relationships and entire communities. These lessons have the power to transform how you view love, connection, and devotion. The story of Madame Laura, a keeper of ancient wisdom. In the tranquil village of Yim, surrounded by rolling hills and endless vistas, lived a woman whose wisdom transcended generations. Madame Laura was not just a woman. She was a living testament to the beauty of life's journey and the quiet strength that comes with age. With her snow-white hair and bright twinkling eyes, she exuded both serenity and vitality, her every word carrying the weight of a life well lived. Madame Laura's home was a humble yet sacred sanctuary on the edge of the village. The scent of burning cedar filled the air, offering a calmness that seemed to slow down time itself. For the people of she was not just an elder, but a guide, a counselor, and a keeper of the soul of the village. A gathering of young minds. One autumn afternoon, a group of young people gathered outside Madame Laura's home. Their hearts were filled with curiosity, eager to absorb the wisdom she had to offer. The village knew of her teachings, stories of love, hardship, respect, and triumph. They had heard how her words could touch the deepest parts of the soul, offering life-changing insights. The group had come seeking this very wisdom, hoping it would illuminate their paths in life. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the village, the group knocked on her door. Madame Laura welcomed them with a warm, kind smile, ushering them into the warmth of her home. The simplicity of the room, with its worn wooden table and modest furnishings, held the weight of history and memory. Each object seemed to carry a story of generations past, making the space feel timeless. Seated around her table, the young people waited eagerly for Madame Laura to speak. The air was thick with anticipation as they prepared to hear the stories that would shape their understanding of life and relationships. The question of intimacy, seeking deeper. Understanding, among the group, one young man stood out. Bold and curious, he had always sought to ask the difficult questions, ones that others might shy away from. As the evening unfolded, his curiosity grew. He had a question that had been bothering him for some time, and he knew that if anyone could answer it, it would be Madame Laura. Taking a deep breath, he cleared his throat and asked, "Madame Laura, may I ask something very personal? I've heard much about oral intimacy, but I want to understand what it truly means. What is the deeper meaning behind this act?" A hush fell over the room. The other young people shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how Madame Laura would respond to such a personal and intimate question. But Madame Laura remained calm, her smile unchanged. She recognized the vulnerability in the question and met it with compassion. Her eyes twinkled with understanding, and she leaned forward, folding her hands on the table. "I am so glad you asked," she said, her voice warm and filled with sincerity. "This is not an easy topic, but it is an important one. Let me tell you what I know." The sacredness of intimacy, a story from the past. Madame Laura began to tell a story passed down through her family for generations. The ancestors of the village, she explained, believed that intimacy in all its forms was not just a physical act, but a reflection of the soul's connection to another. Oral intimacy, in particular, was seen as a sacred exchange between partners. It was not about mere pleasure or desire, but about devotion, respect, and vulnerability. In ancient times, men who understood the sacredness of this act were revered in their communities. They were seen as protectors of the feminine energy, guardians of the life force that women carried within them. For them, oral intimacy was an act of reverence, a gesture of humility, and a way to honor the divine feminine within their partners. Men who embraced this act with respect were seen as wise and brave, Madame Laura continued. They knew that true intimacy is built on mutual respect, understanding, and trust. They honored the feminine energy, which is the source of life, and in doing so, they became more than just lovers. They were seen as guardians of the soul, elevated in the eyes of their community. The importance of vulnerability and trust. As Madame Laura spoke, her voice filled the room with reverence. The young people listened intently, each of them absorbing her words with a sense of awe. She spoke not only of the physical act of intimacy, but of the emotional and spiritual connection that it represented. In their ancestors' time, intimacy was seen as a bond, a sacred language between partners. Men who truly understood the significance of this act were those who honored their partner's needs, ensuring that love and trust were at the core of their relationship. This was not about domination or control, but about creating space for both partners to feel cherished and respected. Madame Laura's words had a profound impact on the young people. They realized that true intimacy was not about taking, but about giving. It was about showing your partner that they are worthy of your deepest respect and devotion. It was about vulnerability, trust, and honoring the sacred connection that binds two souls together. A new perspective on love and intimacy. As Madame Laura's story came to an end, the young people were moved beyond words. The air in the room felt thick with emotion, and they knew that they had just learned something that would forever change their understanding of intimacy. It was no longer just about physical pleasure. It was about building a deeper, more meaningful connection based on respect, trust, and devotion. For the young man who had asked the question, his curiosity had been answered in a way that he could never have expected. He had learned that true intimacy was a sacred exchange, one that transcended the physical and entered the realm of the spiritual. It was about honoring your partner, protecting them, and creating a bond that would last a lifetime. Madame Laura's teaching, intimacy as sacred connection. As the golden glow of sunset bathed the village, the young people entered Madame Laura's home, drawn by the allure of her wisdom. Her words were not merely those of an elder, they were the echoes of the ancestors, rich with emotion, history, and timeless truths. Sitting around a weathered wooden table, the group listened intently as she shared the teachings passed down through her lineage. Madame Laura began by addressing a bold question asked by one of the young men. What is the deeper meaning behind oral intimacy? In response, she spoke of intimacy not as a mere physical act, but as a sacred exchange. Oral intimacy, she explained, was a gesture of love and respect, a deep act of vulnerability and trust. In ancient times, men who understood this sacredness were revered by their communities. They were seen as guardians of the feminine, protectors of the life force that women carried within them. She described how the act of oral intimacy, when approached with reverence, became an expression of devotion, humility, and mutual respect. It was not about domination, but about honoring and cherishing one another. Madame Laura's words, filled with deep sincerity and compassion, revealed a new layer to intimacy, one that transcended physicality and embraced emotional and spiritual connection. The depth of respect in intimacy. As Madame Laura continued, she emphasized the importance of emotional connection in all forms of intimacy. She explained that true intimacy was a dance of vulnerability and giving. It was not about taking, but about offering oneself fully to the other person. In this exchange, both partners demonstrated their deepest respect and devotion for one another. When a man truly understood this sacred dance, he became more than just a lover. He became a protector of the heart, a guardian of the soul. Her words resonated deeply with the young people in the room. They realized that intimacy, in its truest form, was the foundation of every meaningful relationship. It was about honoring each other's souls, seeing each other for who they truly were, and nurturing the connection with care and respect. Madame Laura's wisdom, passed down through generations, reminded them that intimacy, in all its forms, was sacred and should be approached with reverence. The legacy of Helio. A broader understanding of intimacy. After their meeting with Madame Laura, the young people felt a deep hunger for more knowledge, especially regarding the emotional and spiritual aspects of intimacy. they decided to seek out the wisdom of another elder in the village, Helio, a respected figure known for his stories and profound understanding of life's complexities. They hoped that his perspective could further illuminate their understanding. Helio's home, like Madame Laura's, was a place of warmth and tranquility, where the flicker of firelight and the scent of burning wood created an atmosphere of introspection. As the young group entered, they were welcomed by Helio, who immediately sensed their desire for deeper knowledge. With a patient gaze and a quiet demeanor, he began to share his wisdom. Intimacy beyond the physical. The power of connection. Helio's voice was slow and deliberate, carrying the weight of years lived and lessons learned. He explained that true intimacy was more than just physical closeness. It was about connection. It was about knowing someone so fully and allowing them to know you in return. True intimacy, he explained, was built on trust, vulnerability, and emotional connection. It was not about seeking physical pleasure, but about offering one's heart to another in the purest form of love. The young people sat in rapt attention as Helio shared stories of the men in the village who, despite the challenges of their daily lives, always found ways to show affection to their partners. These men didn't view intimacy as a duty or chore, but as an essential part of their relationships. After a long day of work, they would take time to nurture their connection, whether by holding their partner's hand or simply listening to them. Helio spoke of how these small acts of affection created a deep bond between partners. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was the everyday moments that communicated love and respect. He shared how oral intimacy in particular was an expression of devotion, not just a physical act, but a means of showing deep care for one another's well-being. It was a silent way of saying, "I love you," when words weren't enough. Intimacy as a lifelong commitment, nurturing love and connection. Helio continued by describing how intimacy, like any relationship, required nurturing. He likened it to tending a garden, something that needed care, attention, and patience to grow. Relationships, he explained, could not be taken for granted. To sustain love, it had to be nourished through consistent effort and understanding. This meant not only being there for each other during difficult times, but also celebrating the small moments that strengthened the bond. As the firelight flickered, Helio told the group about the unspoken gestures that strengthened the connections between partners, those moments that passed unnoticed but held great significance, a shared glance, a quiet touch, or a smile that conveyed more love than words ever could. These were the moments that made life beautiful, and they were often the most profound expressions of intimacy. The true meaning of love: respect, devotion, and understanding. Helio's teachings left a profound impact on the young people gathered around the fire. They had come seeking answers to questions about intimacy, but what they received was something far greater. They learned that intimacy was not a simple physical act, but a deep connection rooted in respect, trust, and emotional understanding. It was about offering oneself fully to another and showing love in ways that words could not always express. In the quiet of the evening, the group understood that intimacy was not just a fleeting moment of physical closeness. It was a lifelong journey of love, care, and respect. It was about honoring the other person's soul and nurturing the bond between two hearts. As the night wore on, they realized that love and intimacy were not just acts. They were ways of life, a gift to the future. As the fire began to burn low, the group left Helio's home, their hearts full of the wisdom they had gained. They now understood that intimacy was far more than they had ever imagined. It was not just about physical pleasure, but about creating deep emotional and spiritual connections. They carried with them a renewed sense of reverence for love and respect, knowing that these were the foundations of every meaningful relationship. In the days that followed, the young people shared the lessons they had learned from both Madame Laura and Helio with others in the village. Their wisdom spread, and slowly the community began to embrace a deeper understanding of intimacy, one that honored love in all its forms. The teachings of the elders lived on, not just as stories from the past, but as timeless truths that guided future generations. The true meaning of love, respect, and intimacy. The youths, having experienced the deep teachings of Helio and Madame Laura, left their homes that night with hearts brimming with newfound wisdom. Their eyes were opened to the true meaning of love, respect, and intimacy. They felt forever changed by the stories passed down through the elders, and as they walked through the village under the stars, the weight of the evening's lessons settled into their spirits. In the quiet, cool night air, the village seemed to breathe with them. It was as if the very essence of the teachings they had received now flowed through the streets, into the hearts of everyone who would listen. They had come to understand that love was not fleeting or based on grand gestures. It was something enduring, something that demanded generosity of heart and spirit. The transformation of understanding. The days that followed brought a transformation that went beyond the individuals in the group. What had started as a single conversation in the homes of two wise elders had now taken root in the entire community. It was not just the younger generation that had been affected, but the entire village began to embrace a new view of love and relationships. The seeds that had been planted by Madame Laura and Helio began to blossom in unexpected ways. The once superficial understanding of intimacy that had focused on fleeting passions and dramatic expressions of love shifted to something deeper, something more meaningful. The youth of the village began to recognize that love was not just about physical proximity, but about the emotional and spiritual bond that formed the foundation of a relationship. Marriage and relationship. Redefined marriage, once seen as an arrangement of convenience or a societal expectation, was now viewed as a sacred union. It was built on mutual respect, empathy, and emotional connection. Couples who had once taken each other for granted began to understand that love was a living, growing entity. It was something to be nurtured with care, respect, and a deep commitment. As this new understanding spread, the women of the village began to experience a profound shift. In the past, they had been seen as the caretakers of the home, their roles often relegated to that of wife and mother, without much recognition for their emotional and personal needs. But now they began to feel seen and heard. Their partners, inspired by the lessons of the elders, expressed their love not through obligatory gestures, but through genuine acts of care and affection. The small acts of love. The most profound shift was in the realization that love could be shown in small, quiet gestures. The youths came to understand that it was not about grand displays of affection or dramatic moments, but rather about the subtle ways in which love was expressed every day. A kind word, a gentle touch, a shared moment of silence. These were the true measures of a relationship's strength. The men, too, came to see that love was not about making grand declarations, but about living love in every moment. They began to understand that the most powerful expressions of affection were often the simplest. A quiet moment by the fire, a shared laugh over a meal, or a supportive hand in times of difficulty were the acts that truly held their relationships together. Helio and Madame Laura's quiet joy. As these changes began to unfold, Helio and Madame Laura watched with quiet joy. The transformation in their village was profound, not just in the way people treated each other, but in the way they understood love itself. What had started as a lesson passed from one generation to another had now taken root in the very fabric of daily life. Helio and Madame Laura took joy in seeing the small, tender moments between couples, the simple acts of kindness and affection that spoke louder than any dramatic gesture ever could. They understood that the real strength of love lay in these moments, and as they looked upon their village, they saw love in its purest form. A way of life. The village was no longer just a place where relationships were built on traditions or obligations. Love had become a way of life. It had become something sacred that was nurtured and cherished every day. The teachings of the elders had changed not just how people viewed love, but how they experienced it. It was no longer an abstract concept. It had become something real, tangible, and ever-present. The legacy of the elders. For Helio and Madame Laura, the greatest joy came not from seeing grand expressions of affection, but from witnessing the way love had woven itself into the very fabric of the village. The simple acts of care, the small moments of tenderness, had become the foundation upon which every relationship was built. These were the true symbols of love, and they were the ones that would last for generations to come. Halio and Madame Laura's teachings had become a guiding light for the village. Their wisdom had helped people see that love was not just something we take, but something we give, freely, selflessly, and with an open heart. As the years passed, the village flourished not just in numbers but in the strength and depth of the bonds that held it together. The village's transformation. As the generations grew, the village became a place of warmth, compassion, and deep connection. The youth of the village, now fully immersed in the teachings of Halio and Madame Laura, began to lead by example. They showed others that love was not about what you receive, but about what you give. The once superficial understanding of love was now replaced by a deeper, more fulfilling view that enriched the lives of every individual. The transformation was not instantaneous, but over time, the village became a place where love was cherished and respected. Relationships no longer struggled under the weight of societal expectations or obligations. Instead, they flourished under the care and attention that came from a deep mutual respect and understanding, a new era of connection. As the wisdom of the elders continued to echo through the village, it became clear that the transformation was not just about relationships, but about how people viewed each other. The once clear distinctions between roles within relationships began to fade as mutual respect took center stage. Men and women alike were treated as equals in their emotional needs, their desires, and their capacity for love. Halio and Madame Laura knew that their work was not done. They continued to teach, to share their wisdom, and to guide the younger generations. They understood that love, respect, and intimacy were not static concepts. They were living, breathing forces that required constant attention and care. The greatest love stories. What brought Halio and Madame Laura the greatest joy was not the dramatic love stories, but the quiet, everyday acts of devotion that defined their community. In these simple gestures, they saw the true strength of love, the love that didn't need to be declared, but was known in every action, every word, and every touch. The couples in the village had rediscovered each other. The small moments of care, the shared experiences, the understanding that passed between two people, these were the moments that held the most meaning, and it was these moments that would carry the village into the future, a legacy that lives on. As time went on, Halio and Madame Laura passed away, but the legacy of their teachings lived on in the hearts of the village's people. The principles of love, respect, and intimacy that they had shared became a permanent part of the community's foundation. The village remained a place where love was not just spoken of, but lived, nurtured, and cherished. Reflecting on the lessons. As we reflect on the lessons shared in this story, we invite you to think about what you have learned. What stood out to you most about the way love was defined and understood in this village? How can you apply these teachings to your own life and relationships? The message of this story is simple, yet powerful. True love is built on respect, understanding, and daily acts of kindness. It is not a fleeting emotion, but a constant, evolving bond that grows stronger over time. We hope you have found this story as impactful as we have. If these lessons resonated with you, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to hear how you plan to incorporate these lessons into your life. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing valuable content to you. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing from you.